Alright, so hey, what is up guys, this is Sohaib Shah. In today's video we're going to be making a simple login system in Python. So what I mean is not really this, this kind of Firebase kind of login thing. Yes, I will be making a video on that after this one, but today we're going to have a look at the simple concept of how a username and password system works. So I've got it on my screen right now. I'm going to teach you guys how to make this later on and how to actually use this later on. And so for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use this in front of you. So I'm just going to say this up straight. I'm using the get pass library, so I'm going to have to start this or use this from the terminal, not from the play button right here. So all I gotta write is Python 3 and the name of this file, which I named it login system.py. Now it asks me for my username here, and I have these variables and I can put in any of these, so I'm gonna put in the second one. Alright, I put it in the wrong place. Amazing. Anyway, so I'm gonna put in the second one, which is Shah. Alright, and if I press enter now, it's gonna ask me for my password. My password here. Now, here's the thing. I can't enter the wrong password in this. So if I try, like for example for Shah, if I enter the password Shah, I programmed this so that you can only enter the corresponding password. So if my username is Shah, then the only password that it's gonna accept is Sohaib. Or if my username in this case is Sohaib, then the only password that it's gonna accept is Shah. So let me try putting in Shah for this one. So my password, yeah, and since I'm using getPass, it won't really show me what I'm writing, but trust me, I wrote it. You might even have heard my keyboard. So, and it says wrong information, try again, and it's asking me for my username again. But this time, if I actually put in the correct username, which I did before, but the same username and the correct password for it, so it's corresponding password right here. So if I put Sohaib in there, I think I spelled it wrong, but now it says hello Shah. Alright, so it's basically saying hello plus username. So I'm going to be teaching you guys how you can make this today. Alright, so to make this, first of all, you're going to import the built-in Python library getPass. So I'm going to say import getPass. Alright, so what this allows us to do is it allows us to get the password from the user without actually showing them what they're entering. So this is kind of like this extra security feature so that you don't want others to see your password. Now, since this is just like a dummy program, it doesn't actually have any connection to a real security system. We can skip this, but I'm just putting it right there that it's actually possible to do this, and I am going to show you how to do this. So after doing this, first of all, I'm going to define a function, or actually we're going to define our two variables, which is our username and our password. So for the username, I'm just going to say username. Alright, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a list. A list means that it's actually possible to enter more than one username. I could do it just by doing the username string and something, but I want to be able to sign in to multiple users. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a list. Alright, and in that list I'm going to put a few strings. So for example, my first one is maybe Sohaib, alright, my name. And my second one is maybe Darth Vader. So what I'm going to do is, and maybe I'll just put in a third username for telling you guys how this could actually be flexible. So we can say my last username is going to be Shah. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my second username, which is going to be my password. So I'm going to make this a password. Alright, and I'm going to make this one a list too, because what I want is I should be able to enter my corresponding password to the corresponding username. So if I have my username Sohaib, I should be able to give it the password that is only valid for that username. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in maybe the password Shah for this one. Alright, and maybe for Darth Vader, how about I set it to be Luke? Alright, and for my last password, maybe I'm going to put in I am Sohaib. Alright, now notice the capitalization difference. Alright, so now I'm going to make a function which helps us or which allows us to ask the user for their username and their password. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a function as we do in Python, and I'm going to call this one maybe user pass validation. You could split this up into different functions, but I choose not to. And contrary to other languages, in Python what we do is we put a semicolon in front of this. So Python is heavily based upon indentations. Indentations meaning how much space is between the start of the line and here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make another variable, but this time it is also going to be username, but I'm going to say _inp. Now for me what this means is that this is the username input. This is the input in which I'm going to ask my user his username. So I'm going to say is equal to input. Now this is a built-in function in Python which asks the user for some input. Now inside of this we can actually write a string which it's going to display before actually taking the input. So I can say that enter your username. Alright, and I'm going to give them some space to do that. So now I'm going to make a second variable which is also very similar to this. I'm going to call this one password _ input. Alright, and I'm going to set this one equal to, I could actually set this equal to input, but what that's going to do is it's going to show the user what he or she's writing, and I don't want to be able to do this. I want to be able to get a password from them and not actually show them that what they're writing. So what I'm going to do is get pass. So in this kind of, now this may look weird like get pass, but this means that I'm referring to this getPass library, and inside of this library there's a function called getPass. Alright, and we can do the same here. So enter your password, and it's very similar to this input. In the sense of programming, it acts exactly the same as this input string. So we don't this input function. So we don't actually have to program something different for this one. It's actually going to be the same thing. So let's just test this out for now. So to test it, first of all, I'm going to have to call this function. So I'm just going to say user pass validation. There we go. So to run this, to actually be able to not see our password, I'm going to have to, like I said before, I'm going to have to run this through the terminal. So I'm going to do that. Python 3. And the name of this function, the name of this file, which is login system.py, stands for Python. And now it says enter your username. So my username, I could enter anything. It doesn't matter really for now, because we haven't programmed any logic here. Now you can't see the password, but I'm actually entering passwords here. I'm typing on my keyboard. Now this is a very long string, but anyways, if I press enter now, it's just going to close the program because nothing happens. We haven't programmed any logic into this. So now what we're going to do next is we're going to check. So we're going to have a simple if statement. And here what we're going to do is if our username input, so our username _input in username. Now what this means is that if our username, whatever string we got back from this username input exists inside of our variable username. So if I, if for my input I provided Sohaib, now it's going to search for this. And so what it's going to do is it's going to see if this Sohaib exists in any part of this list. Since it does, it's going to return true. If it didn't, then it would return false. So if this exists in, like, if the username exists in username and the password, all right, so our password input exists inside of password. All right, so similarly, it's going to check if the password that we entered actually exists inside the password list. So if it does, it's going to return true. Otherwise, it's going to return false. And also, we want to see if the password that we entered is corresponding to this username. So how we can do this is with a list function called index. And what index does is that it searches for a specific string. So like, for example, I'm going to say an username.index, all right? Index. And inside of this, we can enter a string. We could enter anything, but since our username also returns a string, all right, a set of characters, so we can put in our username input in this. And so now what it's going to do is it's going to get the text that we entered in username input, which could be Sohaib, it could be Darth Vader, it could be anything, and it's going to test if so first of all, in here it's going to test if it exists in it, and if it returns true, then it's going to see if our password actually exists inside of our password list. And then it's going to check that whether the how I should explain this is, it's going to see that on which number this username inputs text exists inside of this list. So how this works is that it's going to take this. So for example, we entered Sohaib here. Alright, so I'm going to replace it with Sohaib. So it's going to see how many items in this list it had to skip in order to get this text. It isn't going to check if it exists or not. It's going to take this string and search for it in this, and then it's going to see how many strings or how many other items in this list it had to skip to get to this one. So since Sohaib is my first item in the list, it didn't skip any other item to get to this. So the index is going to return 0. It didn't skip any other list items to get to this. But for example, if I had entered Shah in this case, then it's going to take this and it's going to see how many it had to skip, how many entrances in the list it had to skip to get to this. So how that's going to work is it's going to get Shah, right? So it's going to see Sohaib, no, that's not equal to Shah. Darth Vader, that's not equal to Shah. Oh, Shah, it's equal to Shah. So how many did I have to skip to get to this point? So it's going to say, that's 1 and this is 2. It had to skip 2, all right? And so this is going to be, now how it's going to return is that it was the third entry, but since it had to skip only 2 to get to this one, so it's going to be Sohaib and Darth Vader, so therefore it's going to return 2 in here. So I'm going to put in username input, alright? Username input. And if this, whatever this returns is equal to whatever our password returns in case of our password. So I'm going to explain this once we have written it. So password underscore input. Alright, so this is going to be our final condition, and we're going to say that if all of this returns true, then we want to be able to log our user in. But I'm going to say login, right, and I'm going to give it our username input. So now since this function doesn't exist, we're going to create a new function above this since we're calling it. So we're going to say define a function called login, alright, and we're going to have to accept a kind of a string. So we're going to accept something called a username, alright, and inside of this function, all I'm going to do is simple. Like, you can put any logic in here, but I'm just going to say a simple print function, and it's going to say hello, alright, and it's going to put the username in front of this. So this is our simple system here. Now let me explain what this means. So first we declared two variables, like we're taking two inputs from our user. Alright, so one is our username and the other one is our password. Alright, and so what it's going to check first of all is that if this username input, like whatever text we receive from the user, and it's stored, like whatever text is stored in this username input variable, does that text exist in this username list? So if it does, it's going to return true, and then it's going to move on to the next condition, which is that is this text that we stored in the password input variable, does this exist in our password list? And if it does, then this is also going to return true, and we can move to the next condition. Alright, and which is that we have to check how many entrances or how many entries in this username list did we have to skip in order to get this username input, like whatever text was stored in this username input. And so if it doesn't exist, then in that case it had to be, like in that case this would already have returned false, so we wouldn't actually be checking all this. But anyway, so now it's gonna see how many it had to skip to get this username text. So for example, I entered my username to be Shah, so it's gonna see, oh, this is Sohaib, this is not Shah. This is Darth Vader, this is not Shah. This is Shah. So how many entries in this list did I have to skip to get here? Oh, first I skipped Sohaib, then I skipped Darth Vader, and then finally I got to Shah. It means that I only skipped 2 entries to get to this, so it's going to return true 2. Alright, and then same for the password. And so what we're basically checking is that if both of these had to skip the same number of items to get to their respective item, then we can say that these this username and this password is corresponding, and so we can return true. Otherwise it's going to return false and it's not going to execute. And then if all of this actually returns true, then we can move on to our login function, and we're gonna supply it with our username input, whatever text we got from there. So that's gonna be the name of the user, or the username basically. And so we can test this now, so we can just run it not from this play button, because if I do, let me show you what happens if I do. So if I play this from here, and now it says enter your username, so I'm gonna enter Sohaib, right? Now it says that get pass warning cannot control echo on the terminal. So echo is basically repetition. So it says that warning, password input may be echoed. Now what that means is that it's warning us that whatever we input in here might just be written back to us. So if I write maybe something like, yeah, you can see that it's written back to us. But this is actually a good way to test our function, so we can say that if I give it the wrong password, like for example my username here was Shah, the password that I'm supposed to give it username was Sohaib, and the password that I'm supposed to give to it is Shah. But if I give it maybe Luke, for example, we can see that it, yeah, so it exited there because it couldn't actually control whatever this was. So we can actually try this again in our terminal, which if I go to my terminal here, I'm going to say python login system.py, so enter your username, and I'm going to say, my username may be that, alright? And my password is Shah, so if I enter my correct password, it says hello Sohaib. But now here's the thing, I didn't notice this before, but I didn't actually put an else statement after this. So what that means that if I, for example, enter my username correctly but not enter the correct password, it's going to exit because it doesn't know what to do next. So all we need is an else statement. Alright, and what we're going to do is that if this isn't actually the case, then what we want to do is print, and we're going to tell them that wrong information. Enter your correct credentials. Alright, so if we run this again, now I'm going to run it from the play button because I want you guys to see what I do here. So I'm gonna put in my username to be, maybe this time I'm gonna do it Shah, alright? And it says that warning, password input may be echoed, may be displayed, alright? So if I write maybe the non-corresponding one here, like Luke, Shah is the third entry, but Luke is the second one, so it shouldn't actually work. And so if you enter this, it's going to say wrong information, enter your correct credentials. But now you can see that it quit. We don't want it to quit. All right? We want it to play this function again. We want it to actually ask us our username and password again, and so this time it's going to give us a chance to correct our credentials. So we can just make it run user pass validation again. And this time if I run it, all right, maybe my my username is Sohaib, and it gives me that warning, don't worry about it, it's not gonna work, it's not gonna happen once you have an actual terminal. So enter your password. This is my password. I'm gonna enter the wrong one again, Luke. Alright, and it says wrong information, enter your correct credential. I misspelled credentials, but enter your username. And so this time I'm gonna enter my correct username, and I'm gonna be Sohaib. Alright, and my password should be Shah, and this time it should work. It said hello Sohaib. Alright, so that works, and this is pretty much our final product here. And if you guys enjoyed this video and learned something, then please hit that like button, otherwise don't hit it. But anyways, after this one I'm gonna upload a video on Firebase and how you can authenticate your users through Firebase and create new accounts and stuff. So stay tuned for that video, and this has been Sohaib Shah, and see you guys later.